Mellow greetings, citizens. What seems to be your boggle? Hello and welcome to another SciFirst MovieTalk episode. So in this episode, I'll be discussing the 1993 science fiction action film Demolition Man, as directed by Brambilla. In 1996, career criminal Simon Phoenix, as played by Wesley Snipes, is terrorizing the streets of Los Angeles, and only one officer can stop him. LAPD Sergeant John Spartan, as played by Sylvester Stallone, who has earned himself the nickname Demolition Man due to the large amounts of collateral damage he leaves in his wake in pursuit of the criminal element. In his latest pursuit to apprehend Phoenix, Spartan dives straight into a loaded warehouse and, in the process of collaring Phoenix, unwittingly blows up his hostages, and so he himself also takes the rap for Phoenix's actions, resulting in them both being placed into cryo-freeze for their punishment, as was the case in 1996. We then fast forward to 2032, 36 years, where the area that used to be Los Angeles is now known as San Angeles, a now supposed utopian society built on the wreckage of what humanity used to be, designed and developed as if from the mind of Ned Flanders. Needless to say that during a parole hearing, Phoenix escapes from his restraints and goes on a rampage in a world where people's ideas of entertainment consist solely of commercial-themed tunes and frequenting Taco Bell or Pizza Hut, but we'll come back to that later. A world where police are ill-equipped to take out their own trash, let alone bring down somebody like Phoenix. So, then in that case, in the words of San Angeles PD, it takes a Neanderthal to catch a Neanderthal. And with that, so then John Spartan is thawed out and reinstated in order to give Phoenix some good old 90s justice. The future just doesn't know what hit them. All in all, by all rights, terms and conditions, this movie shouldn't work. The idea just screams to a 90s cheesy, mindless, brain-dead yarn. Yet it ends up being miles better than it ought ever to have a right to be, and frankly is one of the best sci-fi action movies of its era. There's just something about it that's, at the most primitive of levels, that's just so much damn fun, and it's at its height mixing the vanilla, soft-cushioned future it envisions against a grained and uncensored individual from the 90s, and basically just runs with that idea unapologetically. I wouldn't say that it's filled with all too much hard-hitting action. In fact, it's probably lacking in that department when compared to others in the genre, but instead kind of gives us a pretty decent balance of action, comedy, and sci-fi that takes a particular light view of what tantamounts to pretty dim reality, or, for those on the surface, a pretty bland one at that. It gives us a social commentary on a potential future that seems more relevant now than ever, yet without us kind of ever even realising it. Its total tongue-in-cheek play kind of messes with the ideas of a dystopian future, even a surreal one where every restaurant is Taco Bell. Pizza Hut. It's pure comic book style, over-the-top, kind of outrageous horseplay. The kind of bad, trashy action film that's just so easy to get behind. It's a movie that's just utter nonsense, yet brilliantly compelling at the same time. As a villain, Snipes is absolutely off his head and completely into the role. His energy and bravado are just totally indulgent, like a kid in a candy shop, and I think in the main it's this that in itself that more than sets this movie apart. A lively and truly animated performance, making for a brilliantly styled antagonist that feels well, that kind of feeds well, so not feels well, but feels, it does, but feeds well against the culture of 2032. It's a kind of bewildering, engaging contrast for sure. Stallone is, well, Stallone. Not really much of a difference there. It's his particular MO, but it works. It could have been anybody else, I think, in the role. They do kind of make a crack at Arnold Schwarzenegger being president, which isn't actually outside the realms of possibility anymore. Not so much of a joke. But I couldn't help but kind of wonder if the role of Spartan would have been any different with, say, himself or Bruce Willis at the helm. Yippee-ki-yay. I just don't think it'd have mattered. But Stallone's the man. He rocks it anyway, nonetheless, and moreover absolutely slays as he interacts with the indifferences of the future, as he kind of tries to grasp just what has kind of become of society, struggling with the concept of seashells in the restroom, and enjoying a good rat burger or two. Yeah, might not be frequenting the restaurants anytime soon in 2032. His relationship with the plucky, young and eager San Angeles PD officer, Lieutenant Lena Huxley, as played by Sandra Bullock, leaves a little bit to be desired, but it was never supposed to be a romance, you know? There's just simply nothing there. But the fact that Bullock actually makes something out of nothing is a real testament to kind of her and the preppy character she plays. And again, it works for what it is. Straightforward, to the point, effective. She's actually marvellous at playing the kind of overzealous Lena Huxley, and most certainly a significant part of the movie's charm. Shame, it is actually slightly pre-1994's Speed, as she really did actually almost deserve as equal billing to Stallone and Snipes as they got, you know, being very much the kind of the glue that really held much of the movie's comedic aspects together. Indeed, in my opinion, if it wasn't for Bullock and Snipes, this movie would have been an entirely different movie altogether. They gave it flavour and some genuine charisma. Now, I would say, it does make some kind of weirdly divergent leaps into the future. Given this was released in 1993 and initially set only in 1996, there's a significant amount of tech that's already part of the future, such as the cryo-freeze process itself, which I believe wasn't around in 1993 to that extent, and then kind of lead on only 36 years into the future, and then that tech kind of accelerates even more dramatically. But then admittedly, the 90s were a time when such tech was kind of being developed at the rate of knots, and in some ways it was the new 1950s, with automation and tech kind of becoming into its own. So it would seem kind of right that a vision of the future perhaps would exist here, which would be a strange combo of 90s thinking mixed with a 1950s facade. But some enormous leaps nonetheless. And if you think about it, only 36 years had passed since the fall of civilization as we knew it. Yet nobody over that age, bar two, even seemed to remember anything about that era. Or those that do kind of simply seem to ignore it. I wouldn't think about the intricacies of the plot too hard. That's not the point of this movie, and you'll probably end up with a headache. It's not to be taken too seriously. Prodded too much, this whole thing's gonna collapse around you. Just go with the flow. Enjoy the ride. I did think, however, it was a shame that as everything was kind of set up so well throughout the ending, set up throughout the movie, the ending felt a little more deflated by comparison. Sure, it was an explosion, it was an explosive ending, but not nearly as gnarly as it could have been, with this showdown between Snipes and Stallone, not certainly the one that it was tipped to be. I did love the more sci-fi concept ending, though, and the one that kind of certainly played into the whole theme of Stallone being the so-called Demolition Man. Overall, the movie knows what it is, makes no apologies for it, and leans in full pelt with a brilliant energy, non-stop cheesy one-liners. And I mean, every single shot that's taken in this film has its own catchphrase. And it's it does have a really kind of well thought out, fast, witty dialogue. It's an eclectic mix of action, sci-fi and comedy, with a quirky take on social commentary. It's an absolute blast from start to finish. Crass in places and a little dated every now and again. Certainly blunt, but it's an action flick at the top of its game. Certainly one of its time. I do think, and I did promise, I do think that one of the oddest things about this movie, however, has to be the fact that there is actually a Pizza Hut cut of the movie out there, made for a European audience, where the Taco Bells in the movie and all references to them have been replaced with the Hut. As if we wouldn't have known what a Taco Bell was. Enhance your calm, citizen. So, that brings me to the end of this episode. Many thanks for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please do leave a like. Please do hit that subscribe button for more movie reviews, show reactions, and other movie-related content. Absolutely loved having you at SciFirst MovieTalk. Definitely love to have you back. Most of all, just thank you very much for watching. Goodbye.